Hi, everyone. My name is Sara McGarraugh, and I am an evaluator that is a worker owner of an evaluation firm. There's about 20 so of us here in St. Paul, Minnesota. We work with partners externally, both evaluators or those with lived experience. But I'm here today to talk to you a little bit about the trust triangle and how it can be used. So Francis Free, I don't know how to pronounce their name, and Anne Morris really coined the term trust triangle. And I'll put in the chat at the end some links to kind of read a little bit more about it. But essentially, the trust triangle is this idea of kind of three pillars that make up trust: authenticity, empathy, and logic. I am going to talk about that trust as being between two people, though I think there could be ways, this might be an interesting discussion, is to think about the way that the trust triangle can be applied in more of an institutional context. But here's what I understand it to be when I think about someone I'm just meeting and getting to know, like a new partner. So that's what we're here for. So authenticity, this is when I believe someone is showing up as their real self. They aren't saying one thing, but meaning another. They are articulating their values and following through with them. For empathy, that's this idea that I believe that the person I am talking to cares about me and the improved group in my purposes in a partnership. They aren't only looking out for themselves and their interest. This often looks like, asking questions, offering compromises, thinking about mutual benefit. And then logic is the third part of the trust triangle. And that's this idea of understanding how someone makes decisions and thinks things through. So I might not agree with someone's logic, but if I understand their reasoning and believe that it demonstrates competency, that's where I'm building on or having logic build my trust in someone. One of the questions that prompted me in thinking about, what is the trust triangle and how can it be helpful or used in this partnership conversation is really because the term trust came up in two of the first of these conversations that I was in, where we were talking about how important trust is, the different experiences that folks I was in small group with were kind of the terms that they were talking about in their different experiences and what went well or didn't go well and what those lessons learned were. And so much of what went well was when people had trust. And then when people are giving examples of things that weren't going well, they also seem to be about trust or about one of those three pillars of trust. So it just really kind of sparked for me this idea of the trust triangle because it was something that our company, everyone in our staff, watched this TED Talk. I'll put it in the chat. And then we had someone facilitate us through talking about like how this could be applied. I also wanted to raise kind of this idea of how does the trust triangle, again, like fit in with this larger conversation about and be helpful in partnerships is when I was talking and prepping with Carlisle and Hippolyte, they raised a helpful point about trust, which is that our partnerships typically are codified in a contract, but contracts can't cover everything. It's people that are executing and are implementing contracts. And so when we think about trust and trust between two people or, trust between individuals, we are thinking about how do we build trust in folks that are, implementing a contract? How are we thinking about the trust between someone who's has an expectation of you within a contract? And that trust alone won't change institutions, but you can't change institutions and practices without trust. So like some things that were kind of coming up for me again, why, like, how is this trust triangle helpful is like, think about the challenge, any challenge you faced in a partnership. Um, People are at the center of that typically, and resolving a challenge to like an acceptable, solution really takes trust between people. And so I really thought about and used the trust triangle and thinking about it as like a root cause analysis tool. It's the ability to diagnose a problem in a partnership, um, and whether that, like, the issue that you're facing is due to a lack of trust or if it's eroding your trust. If you see patterns over time of, someone like demonstrating or like you misunderstanding someone's logic, time and again, that starts to erode your trust in that person, when you don't understand how they're making decisions, um, and don't believe that they're kind of really having a logic to that. So you can really think about, oh, is the challenge that I'm having, is it related to one of these pillars in the trust triangle? And if so, what can I do about it? Can I kind of raise or like use this more, objective pillar to help the conversation, and help neutralize perhaps the conversation and find a solution? See if you can rebalance that trust, bring it back. Um, that said, the trust triangle doesn't explain everything. It is one framework among many to acknowledge when something might be going wrong and to help you identify the problem. And then it can also help you see if patterns are emerging that could erode trust. On the more asset-based side of things, um, you know, I I don't really have a strong practice in this, but I think it could be really helpful is if you're kind of coming into a conversation, a new partnership, thinking about what are the elements, the ways that you're going to show up in order to build trust, and be deliberate about building trust with someone new. All right, thanks for your time. And let me put in the chat these links that I was talking about. So there's the article and the TED Talk is what I will add.